What's going on, guys? Welcome to this episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. On this Wednesday episode, you have the Mike and Dan Show, where I, Mike DeHaan, and my co-host here, Dan Austin, talk about real estate investing, business, and anything else that's going on in the world that piques our interest. But first off, it's funny, I feel like this year has flown by. I can't believe it's already the middle of May when we are recording this.
Yeah,
and
it's tough.
It's
tough to accept.
Something that I always think about when just passage of time, right? Is that concept of people grossly overestimate what they can do in a month, but they grossly underestimate what they can do in a year. Mm-hmm. And how true that is, especially when it comes to business. About how I feel like it's so easy to, even since we got back from our business mastermind, a week and a bit ago, you set these goals for the next month, and it's kind of hard to keep up on them. But then I look back, but then you look at the goals that you set for a year. It's our annual goals for our business, we've already reached pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know what that is, but that's a reoccurring thing that I feel like just sort of happens in life. Even not too long ago, maybe a month or so ago, I made an Instagram post where I found in a book my 5-year goals for when I got started in real estate, which I coincidentally written about 5 years earlier. And the funny thing is a lot of the goals that were my 5-year goals I had reached in year 3.
And you thought you would be set for life if you reached those goals, or were those just those are just my stepping stone? Because that's my thing, is I think about a lot of these goals, and you're I totally blew those out of the water, but I don't have the sense of what I thought I would have when I reached these goals.
Well, for sure, right? And when I set those goals, those were my set for life goals. Those were my retire early when I'm 30 goals, right? Which are a bunch of bullshit. Yeah. And because the thing is, the goalposts change, not necessarily because you get greedy, but because your perspective on life changes. For sure. When you learn how to make money and you learn, sort of how to be in control of your own ship, all of a sudden you're well, I thought I was going to be happy with that, living off of $4,000 a month, but I don't have to do that. Well, I think I can actually have luxury.
As you mature, certain inconveniences just they're not acceptable anymore. Certain inconveniences when you're younger and when you're struggling, and you're well, if I just get to that level, you're okay, I'm here, but I don't like mowing my lawn. Mm-hmm. So now I need a couple $100 a month extra.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I also think that there's something to say about how you get to that position, right? Because I think if you kind of grind there and it's super slow and methodical, and you get to your $5,000 a month number, which is always the number that every single person has when they join the Instant Investor program.
5,000.
Or they're a new person, right? A new investor. There's I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with a new investor where they're my goal is to make $5,000 a month in cash flow from rental properties. Cool, right? Mm-hmm. But I think if you grind to that really slowly, and you kind of just barely irk there, you can be more satisfied with that. Versus if you have a big jump and you suddenly have $5,000 a month, and you're well, I also made $700,000 last year, so $5,000 a month isn't that sexy anymore.
Yeah, that's a problem you and I have ran into.
Yeah,
I don't even our rental properties at this point, our portfolio, I kind of just think of that as a time sink and not a cash flow center for us, which I guess it is, but sometimes it doesn't feel like it because the number gets to be so small when you're looking at higher ticket items. It's kind of making a $5,000 wholesale fee versus flipping a house and making 80. Mm-hmm. I still am excited I made $5,000, but 80 is way bigger than 5.
Well, if you're selling a house for a $5,000 wholesale fee when you could flip it and make 80, you should freaking flip that house.
Well, for
really,
sure.
you should.
I'm comparing.
You should wholesale that.
Yeah.
You should wholesale that deal for $40,000, and the flipper can make.
It's the other day when you were talking. You're hey, by the way, I basically just found a $20 bill in my ski coat, which was a $5,000 loose $5,000 money that was hung up in one of our accounts, and it's okay. Cool. Yeah. I don't even think about that anymore. Where when you're starting out in business, especially, every penny counts, and it's not that $5,000. It's not that we overlook that, but it's the excitement around creating $5,000 is nowhere near as satisfying as it was when we first started.
Yeah, because you know how to do it, right? Mm-hmm. I know. And then when it comes, and that's one of the things when it comes to rental properties that's kind of a farce too, is You always hear these people that talk on social media. They're trying to sell you something or get on bigger pockets or whatever. And they're just like, oh yeah, we have these 7 properties and now we retire and we don't do anything. It's like, well, I can tell you that they're not telling you the whole story, right? They either have a windfall from somewhere, right? They have a huge amount of money that they've got, probably from selling you ebooks that you buy.
Right.
They like with their properties, they're not telling you any of the expenses that they definitely have. I mean, we even have like some really nice properties, and those have expenses that come up with them.
They do.
And those eat like an entire year of cash flow. Or they are living such a meager lifestyle that if you're the average person, you don't actually want that, even though they get to go to the beach every single day. Like, it's not that sweet when you go home and you have to like weigh out your Spam and rice to make sure that you don't go broke by the end of the week because you're not getting your rent collected for another.
Some people love that,
days.
man. They love that frugality lifestyle.
Yeah, I don't
Makes
know.
them feel like they're in
not
control.
For sure. It's just not for me, but just different perspectives, I guess. But point being, as we get into this phase of the year, all of a sudden, just looking at like our year-long goals, and I'm starting to try to figure out how we can start moving the needle again, and like what we realistically should be shooting for, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because a lot of people say like if your goals don't kind of scare you, then they're not big enough. But the thing is, it becomes kind of like this like fine balance of like when you're being mature about it, right? You're not trying to like put a lion as your Facebook profile picture and motivate people with bullshit like that.
Yeah.
Like setting realistic goals about what you can achieve, okay, and putting action in place for it, while also make sure that you're kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit, but you're not driving the train off the tracks. Because like we could push and try to pay a $10 million business by the end of the year, but we will probably fail because we will absolutely just like be fraying the boundaries of the business and the systems the entire time.
Yeah.
Right. And then it comes down to sustainability after that.
Yeah. Like, what's your big, hairy, audacious goal? And like, that's great, but the accomplishing of that, if you don't actually know how you're going to do it, like there's some dumb people out there. No offense to you guys that set large goals, because I think if it's a realistic timeline, it's great. But if it's a 12-month timeline, if you have this big goal, to your point, Mike, you're probably going to fail. Because there has to not only be a path there. Okay, so for us, what would we do? Step 1, increase marketing. Just like any other business, increase marketing, convert more sales. All right, we've done it. But what about all the other systems and things that you need to do once you do increase marketing and convert more sales? If you can't actually monetize those people, because when they come in, you don't know what to do with them. It was a big goal that didn't freaking matter anyways. There's no path to get there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, right? And there's a difference between like deciding that you're going to climb El Capitan and you're going to free solo it, right? Like you can free solo it and make it, but you're a freak of nature and everyone's like, damn. It's like, or you could fall to your death.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the risk versus reward is super high.
Yeah, totally. And the same thing can happen in real estate, right? Especially because it's a leverage-based business. So like with ours, you can increase marketing. People that are trying to buy rental portfolios, and we saw this a lot in 2021. They're like, I'm going to raise private money. I'm going to buy everything. And then, oh, well, I can't get any more loans. I'm just going to personally sign on all these loans. And then shit gets weird. They can't exit properties, and now they went bust. You don't quite fall to your death, but financially it's pretty close.
Right. So. Well, and you have a lot of road bumps along the way as you're doing some of these things. I think we have a whole list of road bumps to talk about today that just slow you down, that just deter you, that just kind of make it hard to climb El Capitan, even with a rope.
Yeah. All right. So, the speed bump show, I feel like we were on a high horse last week coming out of the business.
Oh, now you want this dose of reality.
Yeah. So now what's the dose of reality? This is what's really been going on in our world after coming back from our,
I don't know, where do you want to start?
Mastermind. Let's go through the rentals, because we did a lot of mindset, like sort of business shows the past couple of weeks, but I know our rentals are an absolute fucking shit show right now.
Yeah. You did text me and you're like, man, it feels like the bank account there keeps going backwards, but not forwards. Shouldn't it be going forwards?
And then you listed off like 9 problems that we're having.
We have had a rent collection issue. Some like that are justified. Others are just stupid. Like we had a person that worked for us that put on the lease that we collect first and last month rent, right? So this is setting context. I looked at the lease. I was like, yep, it says that. We said that we collected first and last. That is not our policy, by the way. Anyways, we gave a 60-day notice to a tenant 2 months ago and said, get the hell out because you're trashing our place, basically. We don't want you as a tenant. Same tenant. And they waited till April 30th, which was a couple weeks ago now, to actually start applying for apartments and houses, and they were supposed to move out on April 30th, right? And so, of course, tenant did not pay April rent. We have a property manager. The property manager's like, yeah, so I see the lease, and she's telling me that she paid first and last. I was like, okay, figure that out. And then I started digging into it, and I was like, she did not pay last. We said we were charging her for last, but she did not pay. And so now she's gone 2 months, still hasn't moved out without paying. So we're mitigating that, right? So that's one problem with collecting rent.
What's our goal with that? Are we evicting her or what?
We're playing nice for now.
Why? Fuck this lady.
Well, so she's actually, she's going to pay us, like for sure. She's going to pay us.
No, she's not.
Well, she's going to have to pay us because her deposit's not enough to cover the damage that she caused. So she's going to pay one way or the other. Whether we actually collect it, I don't know, but she's going to have some issues, so to speak.
Okay.
First goal is just get her out. That's what I mean by playing nice. We're just saying that, like, you got to get the hell out kind of thing. And then what else do we got going on? Anyways, we got like 4 or 5 other rent collection issues from people that just, things happen, right? We got some Section 8 people that the Spokane, the housing authority hasn't paid us yet, because that's always a transition for those of you that are looking to add Section 8, which is great. Good tenants usually. But there's this whole process when you want to switch to a property manager, change property managers, where you have to do this whole rigmarole to request payment to a new account. And usually you have a couple months lag typically. So we've got all that. And then we've had some maintenance issues. We are replacing a sewer line. We've had a couple more hot water tanks. Those have kicked our ass this year.
What's up with the hot water tanks? Why have you had so many?
I don't know, man. I honestly don't know.
Is it the hard water in Spokane, you think?
No, we've never had hot water tank issues like this. I think it's just luck of the draw. We had some that were old that we just chose not to replace because we weren't planning to keep the property that long anyways. But yeah, those are the hot water tanks are a funny thing because they're really not that expensive, but they kind of are when you hire a plumber. When you talk about, you can go to Home Depot and buy one for $500, but when you throw in the plumber there, next thing you know, you're $1,400-$1,500. And then you add in the fact that you can't find a stinking plumber in Spokane, and you're going to go up to $1,800-$1,900, $2,000 for a stinking hot water tank, which for many of you out there, if you're at $200 a door cash flow, that just wiped out maybe your set asides for the year, because that's a decent capital side. So say maybe you're putting away $100 a month for capital replacements like a hot water tank, 12 months, $1,200. You can kind of start seeing how this goes, and that's why you have those set asides to make sure that $200 cash flow stays as $200 as possible.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and here's how impactful all this can be, right? For, going back to before, these, people trying to live off of the cash of their properties. So, I have our numbers here. Theoretically, if everything was operating as it should, including CapEx and maintenance set-asides, we should be cash flowing, with our joint portfolio about $9,400, right? If stuff was going as expected. Instead, with all these expenses, the bank account has been slowly going backwards for the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Right. So those are, do the quick math. That's like $20,000 in expenses that we've had. Mm-hmm. And now you think about these people that have 4 properties and claim to make $4,000 a month.
Liars.
It just
doesn't add up. Because of the fact that we've owned enough, we've grown our portfolio, or we're shrinking our portfolio right now. We've owned enough, we've stabilized enough properties to understand, and we're in a pretty you and I too have owned in cash flow market and appreciation markets, and are experiencing that in Spokane alone, right? Spokane used to be a pretty good cash flow market. Now it's more of an appreciation market. So we've lived through a few things in just a short period of time. And so, yeah, the tough thing people don't talk about, especially if you're growing a portfolio, is it takes years to stabilize properties if you're not adding them to it, because every time you add a property, you add risk. And guess what? You don't have a reserve for capital expenditures and operating expenditures. You don't have that reserve yet. So if something does happen to that property, you're taking that from another property's reserves until you've saved it up from the cash flow for that property. And so if you're always adding a property, and I guarantee you the longer you own properties, the more things that fail. So if you're always adding 1 to 2 to 3 properties a year or more, you're always dealing with this churn and attrition of your capital, CapEx and OpEx reserves, meaning that you can do 2 things. You can say you're living off the cash flow, or you can actually take that cash flow to build up those reserves a lot quicker and not have the cash flow to you directly. You're still putting it in your bank account. You're just not getting it to go live off of. And so when you see these people saying that, yeah, they're like, we bought a quadplex and now we're financially free. It's like, no, you're not.
No, you're not.
And even savvy investors that I know that own quite a few properties, they still look at top line revenue minus PITI minus the principal, interest, tax, and insurance and call that cash flow. And I can't believe we're even talking about this. It's like basic fundamentals. That's not your cash flow.
Yeah, but they got to feel good about all the time they're putting in, though, man. That's all they care about. I mean, I don't know. I think that's why it's so important that, if you're going to do real estate, that you should do it as a business, and you should have an active component to it as well, where you're making massive income and not just focusing on the passive income.
If you're leaving your W-2 quote, right, to be a real estate investor, and you think your only path to success is passive, don't put yourself in that box. Make sure you add to your point, an active element. Maybe it's flipping 3 houses a year, maybe it's wholesaling deals, whatever it is. Maybe you do get to that point to where you can actually hit $5,000 a month and really good clean cash flow. You still want that option and opportunity to make some real money to go and have fun and blow on things.
Yeah. And even if you don't want to do like the traditional investing style businesses of flipping and wholesaling, there's other stuff you can do, right? You could be a realtor. You could be a contractor. You could go and start some kind of contracting business.
It doesn't even have to be real estate specific.
It doesn't. Well, I mean, like if you want to be kind of in that realm where you still have a reason to network with investors, right? Start a landscaping company, start a door hanging company.
Maybe you're a handyman. Maybe you want to be a handyman and start charging people $100 an hour.
Maybe you're not a handyman, but you're good at networking. So you bill people $80 for handyman work, and you pay handyman $50. Totally. You make $30 on the spread. That's called a business. Yeah.
And I think the cool thing that the key to that is if you can actually get to this point to where your basic needs are met with the cash flow of real estate, then you can start trialing and erroring things that you actually want to do. Because oftentimes, like you find that, maybe it was a good thought to produce active income in a certain way, but it was just not, it was like going to work every day. Yeah. And so you don't want to do that. So you try something else because your basic needs are met. You don't feel like you have to be stuck into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's a super huge point. And that massive income versus passive income thing that I've said the past couple of times. I found out who I stole that from.
Oh, you found
thanks to, no, well, I didn't. So Nick, one of the guys in our instant investor program, he heard of me today on the last one, and he sent me a video from Brandon Turner from like 2018.
Oh, that doesn't count.
So, it doesn't count, right? It's like one thing that he said a long time ago,
and he's not branding it. So you can get a notebook with massive income versus passive income on the front, and that could be your thing. That could be your like daily planner that you sell.
Absolutely. I mean,
that's the thing everybody's selling right now is the daily planner for goal setting. What a business model to be in right now is, like, especially I feel like post-COVID, like the entrepreneurial hustle mindset, just like bullshit of everything. like all the people. So I have a really good friend of mine. He's probably going to listen to this too, and I'm about to shit on him. They bought a cold tank, okay, which is cool. Like I get that. I haven't seen it, so I don't know what it is. He told me it's like an inflatable cold tank. Right? I'm like, so you bought a kiddie pool for like $200? Yeah.
Like, I don't know what this thing
I haven't seen an inflatable one yet. I've always seen the fancy ones that are like $12,000.
Yeah, and I don't know what the difference is. I haven't seen it, but like I have in my image that it's like literally a industrial designed looking inflatable kiddie pool with like, kick-ass whatever branding on it, and that's like the thing, they like
cold
probably
plunging is like the hot thing right now, the hot health thing.
It's I know it's just so crazy.
It's not as big a deal though. Not as big a thing as the in the abundance crowd as the IVs that everybody gets. I don't know if those are good. I have no idea, but I just know like a lot of people do that. A lot of people that have money to go get their vitamins injected into them. The only time I've given myself an IV is like when I was younger and in the military, and you get really hungover and you just hydrate yourself with saline. Like that was cool, but I never vitamins.
I mean, here's also the other thing too, is there's all these people that do that and none of them drink. So I'm like, what's the point?
Oh, they don't, the guys that do that, the people that do the vitamins, they don't drink alcohol?
No, so like,
because
you do that, right? They're too healthy. But the point of that is so like if you're dehydrated, you have problems, you can level out your body.
What? It's like intravenous. What do they call that stuff?
The IV fluids?
I thought they had like some name.
It's like saline solution.
Well, I knew that, like just saline, but I'm talking about the guys that go out and get like their cocktails of like energy and B12, and it's like they're just slamming like a 5-hour energy into their arm, and they're like, I feel great.
Totally. Yeah, really. You just put a bunch of freaking caffeine in there. It's like the poor person's version of the Blood Boys that they used to do in Silicon Valley, which I'm sure they don't do anymore. They made fun of it on that TV show, but it was actually a thing where you'd have the billionaires that would go and find like a young, like super healthy 20-year-old that had the same blood as them, and they would like pull out their blood and they would whip it through these things, and then they would put it in their body. Basically like blood doping, but with somebody else's blood.
Yeah, which is kind of gross, but
it's so creepy, dude.
So your point is that the hustle culture right now is making it so people buy inflatable dip tanks.
Well, my point is that if you're an entrepreneur, right? If you can find something to appeal that crowd, you can do so absurdly well if you can get a good marketing team.
Right. Well, it goes back to this marketing, right? I don't know. I'm curious to know who started where did was it Joe Rogan? Like that's the main cold plunge. Like this was several years ago now. Like that started because it's like, what was the purpose of that? I don't know that I believe any of the studies, and I haven't read any of the studies behind it that it's actually good for you.
So there's always been kind of like the alternate health crowd, So like I remember hearing about some of that stuff, decade and a bit ago. Started with that company On It.
Yeah, that's Joe Rogan's company, right?
Joe Rogan has ownership in it. That guy that owns that company is a freaking sleazebag.
Aubrey Marcus, is that his name?
Oh yeah, he's such a snake oil salesman. Yeah, Aubrey Marcus.
Oh,
but,
now cold plunges are snake oil salesmen.
Oh, they have some proven stuff, just not the way that people use it. Yeah. But he's the one that first started with like the nootropics, and then he was doing the hot cold therapy and all that. Like the biohacking thing kind of started mainstream from them. I'm pretty sure.
He's like, dude, I feel great all the time, and I do all these things and HGH.
And HGH, right? And yeah, just like weird stuff. And then also, Ben Greenfield, who's just up the road from us here, like literally 15 minutes from our house.
He's a nerd.
He was super into that, but he was also doing it from like it kind of came up with like the paleo sort of movement, in like the 2010s of like, oh, we only eat and do things like cavemen did, and cavemen were exposed to extreme temperatures all the time, and then they just decided, oh, maybe we can productize it and turn it into a thing where we convince CEOs that they should pay too much money, or people that want to be like CEOs. Model. Yeah. Well, the thing with all that stuff, it just always drives me crazy too, is people get so into it and they have like these crazy routines and all those sort of things because like people like Joe Rogan or Tony Robbins or whoever else is like doing these things, right? Those people, they can do all that. They can have their 5-hour morning routine because they're already fucking loaded. They can do whatever the hell they want. They're not successful because they do things. They do those things because they're successful.
They did decades of grinding so they could have their 5-hour morning routine.
Exactly. Yeah. Tell you what, when Joe Rogan was on the rise, he wasn't doing any of that. He was he on Fear Factor? Was that Joe Rogan?
Yeah. It was. I remember that.
He was there. He was there making girls with fake tits eat spiders off casino tables.
Like partially
That's where he
scripted.
came from.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. He was probably in the back, like just hating himself, taking a shot of tequila, going out there, kind of encourage people to eat more of the spiders off the blackjack table. I remember that in particular, one of the Fear Factor episodes where they had these big ass spiders with like these claws, and they're making him eat them.
Oh, gross, dude.
Come on. Or the worst one I remember, now we're getting in all the fringes. There was one episode they did where they cracked an ostrich egg.
Oh, I remember that one.
It's like a gallon.
I remember that. Yeah.
And they had to drink it.
Yeah, that's gross. Yeah, that shit was terrible, dude. Let's talk about this
Joe
We
Rogan
Buy
came
Ugly
from.
Houses article instead. Let's talk about that. 'Cause I think that's a good topic.
Yeah. So give some background on that.
Okay, so I was sitting there. Actually, it was like, this is stupid.
I just can't get off the ostrich.
I know. It was like probably 4:30 on a Saturday morning. I probably sent it to you while I was awake. I don't know. But it was, I can't remember who wrote that article, or I guess what company. It was like it was kind of like a fringe.
It was a yuppie, super liberal Apple crybaby.
It was.
writer.
It was like something that, because I'm super basic and I have the news thing on my Apple thing and on my phone, and so once it pops up, I was like, oh, We Buy Ugly Houses. Like, I got the notification that a new article had posted, and that's one of the few, because I don't pay for Apple News, one of the few that I have access to. So I read it. It's quite a long article about this reporter who kind of dove into the brand, the We Buy Ugly Houses, the HomeVestors franchises, which is the biggest, off-market real estate company based out of Texas. It's been around a long time. And the article started from a son of an older lady who had dementia, who had sold her house to a local franchisee of the HomeVestors group. And it was obviously at a discount. And because the lady had dementia, the son got involved and was like, what the hell? And then the guy, it sounds like, was a dirtbag. Was like, nope, I signed a contract with her. We're selling it at this price. And it got kind of messy from there. And I don't remember the results, if there were any from that one. But then the person went and investigated some people at HomeVestors and found the corporate HomeVestors, and was having all this dialogue with all these different people and really painting it in a very, very bad light. And kind of that, like, stealing money from old ladies and taking advantage of people and buying houses at a discount, but didn't really talk about any of the why people would be selling it at a discount, or speak to any of the positives that come out of that. And this was, again, just targeting HomeVestors franchisees only, which I'm okay with.
Yeah. I mean, it's people that are anti-real estate investor, right? The funny thing to me about that article, well, first off, whenever I see stuff like this, I always think it's funny, because the people that are in this, they fall into a certain political demographic 90% of the time. They're anti-capitalist, usually super liberal, whatever. And all of a sudden they care about old people, when the rest of the time all they do is bitch about how old people made it so that they can never live the American dream anymore. Yeah. So it's like, stop fucking pretending like you care.
Exactly.
So that's one big part of it. Two, the language that was used in the article was so, like, inflammatory in a way that was just very silly, that made it sound, really bad. And, there's bad apples in every industry.
Right.
It's going to happen. Real estate's no difference. Real estate is almost more prone to it because there's a lot of money on the line and the barrier to entry is relatively small.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen. You can go find it, car salesman. You can go find it in health, the same people that are peddling nutrition stuff at different doctors' offices and shops. They have just as bad ethics as these people. So that's going to happen. And the last thing, though, that I really noticed was how the person that was in question was the top performing We Buy Ugly Houses franchise, I think it said. And they've only done, was it 50 deals in the last 2 years?
Right. Yeah.
I was like, that's really bad.
That's pretty bad. Well,
honestly, for the cost to operate that business, to have only done that, because We Buy Ugly Houses is insane.
Yeah, they pay a franchise fee, plus they pay a fee per lead. It's a pretty costly model. Is it a great model? I don't personally know. We know a guy locally, really good. He's great, does good. He does a lot of work outside of his HomeVestors model, not like outside of it, but like he sources a lot of deals locally from people like us and all that sort of stuff. Great guy, honest, high integrity. I would do business with him any day. We've also met other guys where it's like, you suck. Like, you paid for this franchise. You suck at everything anyways, and you're desperate because you're losing money every month because you don't know how to run a business regardless.
Yeah. And so what it costs, people start that up. It's like an $80,000 upfront investment to get all of their stuff, which I don't even know what it entails. Then they require you to spend a certain amount of marketing money into their pool, that they use to operate. They operate it for you in your market. And then they make you share those leads with the other We Buy Ugly Houses, HomeVestors people in your market, right? And then on top of that, when you do the deal, you have to give them a portion of the deal.
Yeah, I think some of that, when you give them a percentage of your deal, I think some of that does go into that local marketing pool, like the local, like larger pool, because they do all the billboards and all that bullshit for them. Which is funny though, because they drive them all to their website on everything, and so you don't actually have control of the leads coming in. That you basically have to buy the leads from them. So like you just basically get whatever they give you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember talking to Jake, who's the guy here today, and what was he saying? Their average cost per lead was like 11,000, or per deal was like $11,000.
I don't remember, but I'm sure it's got to be pretty high.
It was really high. It was like 3 or 4x what ours was.
Which is why a lot of those guys end up flipping almost everything they get, because they don't have as much opportunity, and their cost per deal is so high that they need to flip it to make that extra margin.
Yeah. I mean, and the crazy thing is too, is they don't provide any like real estate education or anything else. So people buy into it and they don't even know what they're doing. Yeah. Like we had a guy that we worked with in our partnership program for a while that didn't even know how to comp houses.
Yeah. I forgot about that.
So what a freaking nightmare.
He didn't know much at all. And yeah.
But like the pitch when we, decided we were going to work with him was he had a HomeVestors franchise. Like, oh, cool. This guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Nope.
He does off-market real estate.
No idea.
Did not know it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like kind of directly what we're trying to compete with. What we are competing with our partnership program is, so let's say you want to do an off-market business, okay? You want to do an off-market real estate wholesaling business. You don't want to do any of the work. Instead of paying them $80,000, come pay us a fraction of that. We'll run the entire thing. We'll do the sales. We'll do all of it, and then you can have most of the deals too. We're not even going to rip you off like those.
Yeah,
people.
we're not going to.
You don't have to have a stupid.
You don't have to have this exactly. You don't have to have the sunk cost bias where you just paid $80,000 up front. It's like you pay a smaller fee ongoing so that you can make clear decisions. With a problem with a lot of franchises, even non-real estate ones, is you have to pay so much per month, and then they cripple you with franchise fees throughout of taking a big chunk of your profit. And so it's like almost this pyramid scheme where basically the person that paid up front is getting the shit end of the stick. Like we kind of flipped that model on its head, because we would never buy that business. So flipping that model on its head where we give all the upside to our clients and we just take the small pieces of pie that we think is fair for our business to keep running and make profits for ourselves. But I think this article though speaks to a few different points that we should also be aware of. Is there are bad apples in any industry, and they can give you a bad name. And so for you to compete with them, all you have to do is not be a shitbag, and actually take care of people, and don't try to rip people off, and don't try to be this person, because there is the risk that you do end up on the front page of the newspaper, and you don't want that. But also recognizing that that's your competition, it's not that hard to beat it. That article kind of lays it out there of like who's the worst case people you're dealing with. And you don't have to work with those people. You just have to be better than them. And I can assure you, you'll always outperform people that act that way, because we know enough people in this industry on both sides of the fence. And the ones that tend to be more honest, high integrity, always win. It doesn't feel like it in the moment sometimes, because you will lose deals to scrupulous dirtbags.
Yeah. And transparency is really all that takes too, is being honest with the sellers you're talking to, with your intentions about it. You are trying to make money. Tell them you're a business. You will make money on their house. If they don't understand, like if they get upset about that,
right,
I know what to tell you. Like they're going to find out about it anyway if they want to.
Right.
And honestly, if you feel like you need to be doing that to get all your deals, you need to figure out your own systems, because you need to have more of an abundance mindset. And if you're doing it right, you should have enough opportunities that should be a problem.
And when in doubt, like if you're not feeling good about what you're doing, then step back and take the high road, in my opinion. Like if you're dealing with a lady that has dementia, maybe you don't know, maybe this guy didn't know, but like after you build that rapport, after a while, somebody that's probably not, we've had to deal with this where if they're not sober, we don't close, right? That's not something that we do. If they can't cognitively make a decision, we're going to back out of it. If they tell us they want to back out of it, they're like, I just don't want to sell my house anymore. It's like, okay, fine. Like that's the deal. We might try to make some arrangements outside of that to still give ourselves an opportunity, because we have some invested in that person, in that property, but we're not gonna like take somebody's house from them.
Yeah, I mean it comes down to the situation, and we've been in this realm. If someone has like dementia or they're a little bit off, you can tell. Right. Like don't.
And that's when you get their kid involved. Like this person this lady in the article had a son. Bring them in the loop and say, hey, just so you know, this is what's going on. Like, and if their kids are there to help them and can help serve their parents, which you hope that's the case, then everything should be good for you still, as long as you're doing a good job.
Yeah, and if you call the son and they're like, no way am I letting you sell my house at that price, say, awesome. That's totally cool. How can we help provide services? And here's the thing that'll happen very regularly, I promise, because we went through this. We have an older person, there's something a little bit weird going on. We can tell they're not all the way there. We talk to the kid, the husband, the brother, whatever, and they say, no, I'm not going to let them sell for this price. And they say, okay, that's cool. Will you come look at the house with me? Sure. They show up. They see the absolute freaking disaster that's the house. And they're like, what did you want to buy it for again?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And you're there, right? You're making yourself available. You're being honest about the situation. Most people will take the convenience in that. And that is solving people's problems and providing a service, which is what this business is all about.
Totally.
So, but anyways, yeah, it was an interesting article. It's just funny when stuff like that comes out. But if you're interested, though, in the partnership program that we just talked about, which is our direct competition with HomeVestors, you should email me at mike@collectingkeys.com, or you could also hit me up on Instagram at mike_invest. And I'd be happy to chat with you about it and see if you're a good fit for it, because it's definitely not like something for everybody. But if you want to, get something done and you're serious about it, we should chat about it. It's like a premium version of our instant investor program that you've heard us talk about. But anyways, that's a good place to stop, I think. Anything else, Dan?
Yeah, gosh, it's already been almost 40 minutes here.
Yeah,
I think that is a good place to stop.
Sweet. Right on, guys. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of the Mike and Dan Show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share it with everybody in your network. It is the easiest way to grow this show. Just think about however you heard about this show, whether it was like seeing a review or on Instagram or, someone told you about it, and just share it the same way. That's the easiest way to be like, how should I spread the word about this? Just do the same way that you learned about it, because, it's obviously working. So just copy that. Very simple. And it does us a huge solid. Aside from that, you should go to collectingkeyspodcast.com/free, get your free 5-step guide to generating off-market leads, and that can get you, competing with HomeVestors on your own very, very quickly if you want to do that. Aside from that, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll talk to y'all next week.
See y'all.